Big news out of the NFL, though. Let's start here. Jaire Alexander just signed a deal with the Baltimore Ravens, and this deal at only $6 million looks like a really smart, savvy, good thing for Baltimore. They're always adding veteran, former great members of the secondary. Like that is, they say there's a linebacker U, Penn State, or there's different organizations known for different things. If you're a recently successful, out of a gig DB, call the Ravens. They'll probably bring you in. But Jaire Alexander has been a really good player recently. Just a couple of years ago, he's been hurt a lot.
It's injuries, yeah.
Anytime, ask Washington with Marshon Lattimore. You sign a guy who's dealing with a bunch of injuries. You don't know how that's going to go. But speaking of Lattimore, I can't help but thinking about the juxtaposition here. The Commanders traded a third, a fourth, and a sixth-round pick for Lattimore, who they're paying $18 million this year. The Ravens gave up no picks and paid $6 million, and they get Jaire Alexander. Who would you rather have right now? I'd rather have the guy that costs no money and no picks, just from a talent standpoint, over Marshon Lattimore, let alone 3 draft picks and $18 million, 3 times as much. The Ravens are playing chess here.
Yeah, I would have done this. I would have offered a little bit more than that, knowing now, especially that this is what he's willing to accept. I mean, man, oh man. And again, here, the Baltimore secondary is excellent. I mean, it's led by Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton, and you got plenty of players there. So if it doesn't work out for him, you're still pretty good. If it does work out and you get any kind of meaningful play from a guy that is not that far removed from being excellent, what an unbelievable boon that is. But to me, if you're the team that has to have a stud, needs a number one corner, and you're going to sign him and count on him doing that, you're going to be left disappointed probably. But this is punter money. This is a special teamer money. This is like nothing for a guy that could be really good, that needs a reclamation, that needs a reputation change, that needs to turn over a new leaf and get himself to his next deal so everybody benefits from it. I would have gone out and done this. And Baltimore did, so tip of the cap.
That deal makes the Lattimore deal look like a huge problem. I don't think you can quite slam the gavel yet and say the Marshon Lattimore trade was bad. But
I've written the paperwork up. I don't have a signature yet.
You acquired him in season last year.
Yeah.
You didn't do that because you were hoping that he would eventually figure it out last season, but really that you just wanted to have him this year. You traded in season. You didn't wait till the offseason because you wanted him to help you make whatever run you were going to. He ended up being the weakest link on the team and struggling and being a liability for them during the postseason. And one of the big reasons why they gave up almost 60 points in the NFC Championship game. That deal, though, right now, this moment, looks terrible.
Yeah.
It looks like a L. And you're not going to hit on all of them. You're allowed that. You're allowed to miss. Like, this is not an anti-Adam Peters, a question whether or not he's a really good GM conversation. It's just calling balls and strikes. And that one went all the way to the screen in the air so far.
And I would have 100% have done it at the time. The analogy I used, used before, and I'll use it again, is to me, this is like a race car, like a race, where my car wasn't expected to be able to compete with the big boys. I'm up there with Max Verstappen and company. I got a chance to win a really big Grand Prix that's really, really important. And my tires are failing. I got a fatal flaw. I got a huge issue. And somebody drives up next to me and goes, "Hey, I got some tires for you." It's worth it more in that moment for me to try to fix those tires. When I'm in a race I didn't expect to be in, I could just finish 20th. I could just be 6 and 11, and nobody would care. But I'm here in a pretty special place. It was worth the risk to me to take on those tires to see if I could win the race. That was totally reasonable. Now, in retrospect, so I'm not saying that was stupid or whatever, because I would have done it. It does not look very good at all.
Yeah, I was for the trade. I'm not changing that. I mean, I'd take the L, I guess, too. But they better get production out of him. But every time something like this happens, today, Jaire Alexander, 0 draft picks, available on the scrap heap, gets 1/3 this year of the money you're going to pay Marshon Lattimore. How do you not draw a comparison between a couple of guys who have played at a Pro Bowl level and who have played at all pro levels in the NFL? And if you were to bet, forget the picks that you gave up, forget the money that's being paid. You just have to take on either 28-year-old Jaire Alexander, a 2-time Pro Bowler, with the baggage he comes with after falling out of favor in Green Bay and self-appointing himself a captain to walk out to the coin toss and saying the wrong thing during the coin toss, or Marshon Lattimore, who's a year older at 29, who has not been healthy and played at a really high level for over a full season since 2021, I think you'd bet on Alexander being the guy to return to form. That's not even accounting for the draft picks and the money that Washington gave up that the Ravens didn't have to. Do you think it's even fair that that's my immediate takeaway, though?
No, it's not. Well, it's not unfair. I think it's perfectly apt. I think it's very.
So it's fair.
Yeah, that's what I mean to say. Sorry. I realized because I went too hard with the note with the negative, and I was trying to say you're fine. The point is because they had the option to get out of jail.
Yes,
they could have paid him nothing.
Now there isn't really truly guaranteed money moving forward, so they can get out of the deal after this year. He's got $2 and $36 left, but there's only $2 million in dead money. So if they could cut him now, essentially at any point, and it's not going to hinder them. But this year they doubled down. They made the trade. It went badly last year. They get to the negotiating window, and you're basically signing him to a 1-year, $18 million deal, or you're letting him walk. And on a corner market, where Jaire Alexander, we just found out, is a $6 million player, they paid Marshon Lattimore 3 times as much and signed back up.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal to me. So
would they have done that if they didn't give up those draft picks?
And that, by the way, is a huge question. I don't think they would have.
I think if, let's just say, to make this conversation work, that he got cut last offseason.
Mm-hmm.
They signed him last offseason, to the deal that they inherited, and they could get out of it at the end of the year. And he had the season he had. He barely played. When he did play, he was bad. But they didn't give up any picks, so there's not a reason to see it through or to give him one more shot. Is he still on the Commanders? No. I say no.
Yeah, I say no. I mean, it's not quite analogous, but like imagine, I'm trying to draw the parallel. If a formerly good defensive tackle who was kind of down on his luck and had been oft injured is available and signs for a third of what Daron Payne makes, I'm not making the comparison where I go, you're going to get that production from that guy and they're paying Daron Payne X. It's because they could have gotten out of the deal with Lattimore. And that's kind of my point here, is there were options. And there were options at the high-priced cornerback market. If they wanted to say, let's have 2 number ones if Marshon Lattimore is great. Let's go pay Travarius Ward. Let's go pay Carlton Davis or DJ Reed. They didn't do any of those things. They went kind of middle of the road, as is their want, to Jonathan Jones and said, we've got a 1. Now we're gonna have a couple 2s or 2As or 1.5. So Sanders still and Jones and whoever. That to me was such a. I mean, that's kind of the point here, is that if it doesn't work out with Jaire Alexander, you're out so little. If it doesn't work out with Lattimore, oh my God, right? Like that's how I would think that way. It doesn't seem like they do.
Yeah, I also just think Alexander, who was a second-team All-Pro multiple times, which Lattimore has never been before, and was a second-team All-Pro as recently as 22. Lattimore's last Pro Bowl season, just good season, was 21. If I'm picking between the two of them, I would take my shot with Alexander. Now, what I don't know, because I haven't asked Dan Quinn or Joe Witt, is would Jaire Alexander be as good a fit defensively for what they like to do as Marshon Lattimore? It's very possible that in a world where both were available at the exact same rate, they would take on Lattimore, who's got some length and is physical and, at the peak of his game a few years ago, did look like a Dan Quinn corner. And maybe they would say that with his size and just his physical nature, that he oozes what they want defensively in their secondary at 6 foot and about 200 pounds. And maybe they would tell you that Jaire Alexander, who I think of as more of a ball hawking, athlete at cornerback, twitchier guy, smaller guy, he's about 5'10", 190. Maybe they would say he's not as big a fit. He's certainly not from the Dan Quinn school of size necessarily. But when a corner who's got game becomes available and somebody gets a great discount on him, it's just going to pique my interest until I see what happens with Marshon Lattimore. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Stefan's in D.C. What's up, Stefan? You're on Grant and Danny.
Hey, how you guys doing? This take kind of makes me frustrated. You say you just call them balls and strikes. I'm going to call you Angel Martinez, because
Angel Hernandez is who you're looking for, but it's a good line.
When Marshon was with the Saints prior to his injury, I believe his metrics had him as a top 3 corner. He gets hurt. I'm a former corner defensive back. when your legs go, you have an injury to your legs, it's bad business. And so when he's out, he was out 3 weeks when he came to us. He was already out a couple of weeks with them. You're talking about his conditioning. You're talking about his skill set as far as him doing his drills and stuff, staying on point. He was off, and then immediately comes back and had to face A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, some of the top guys. So I'd say you got to give him grace. And then this comparison is off because, you know, they picked
Well, before you go to the comparison, I want to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've given him nothing but grace. There's so much grace in my bag, it's spilling out of my bag onto the floor. I was on the record all of last year. I was very patient, said that it was going to take time, that he was probably out of shape, even as he played terribly when he played at the end of the year. My point was they didn't just trade for him for this season. I just told you I would have made the trade. But when Jaire Alexander, who takes no draft picks, signs for $6 million for the Baltimore Ravens, I just think it is factual to say that that deal does look worse from a sheer market standpoint. You gave up way more for a house. And by the way, if you're just doing a house comp, you mentioned the quality of Lattimore, no doubt about it. All of the reasons you said for why he didn't play well and hasn't in a few years are true. It's a health-related thing. There's no guarantee he gets healthier or stays healthier. And when he was awesome, best corner in the conference maybe at one point in time, that's 4 years ago now. 4 years ago, like an Olympics period. Jaire Alexander has played at that level more recently, is my point. And one of those guys has been a top 2 team All-Pro multiple times, and it's not Lattimore. But go ahead.
Well, I would just say with the house comp, that's like saying you just purchased your house on a block, but when you were looking, there was this beautiful landscape house in a cul-de-sac. You loved it, but it was on. And then a month after you buy your house, Miss Jenkins up and died. You can't say, "Oh, I should have waited. I would have got it." It just,
no, but you could absolutely say the deal
I got a bad deal.
The deal I got for my house sucks. You could absolutely say that. If I spent $900,000 and a better house 2 months later sells for $775, my deal looks worse. That's absolutely a thing.
No, I mean, but he's not healthy, and you're comparing him to a guy who's
but
going to run on
you're
the field
answering why he
and
hasn't played well. You're acting like I'm saying he can't play anymore when he's healthy. I'm not. You're right.
But the
hang on a second. Hang on. I'm going to let
here.
you keep going. You keep saying he hasn't been healthy. That's true, which might still be the case moving forward. But let's say it isn't. That's fine. What I'm saying is it's been 4 years since he played at a high level. You're saying, well, that's because he's not healthy. And I'm going, I agree with you. It's still been 4 years.
So comparable to what his high level was, but we're talking about what he can do, what he was doing this season prior to his injury. So that's what the Commanders was looking at. They were looking at how he was playing this year, which was rating him at the top of his level. Then he gets hurt. My thing is, we got to give him a point to show what he can do this all season.
That's what they're doing.
Going into camp. Yeah, but the whole narrative is, he's a waste. That's all I hear when everyone, not just you guys, but multiple shows.
But Stefan, would you acknowledge that so far, and they only paid him $600,000 last year, but they re-upped at $18 million. So far, it has been a bad trade. You have to acknowledge that.
Well, if I knew going in that he was injured and I picked him up, and my thought is, okay,
the reason it's been a bad trade is that he was injured. But you have to acknowledge you traded for a guy who, by the way, was hurt when you traded for him, who didn't get healthy. Yeah. So far, what they gave up, which was draft picks and a lot of money for a guy who was hurt, and then when he played was a weak link. So far, it's been a bad trade. That's
if he was on a 1 year deal, then yes. But then that you got 2 more years.
Right, but that's what could happen. So far, has it been a bad trade?
I can't say that because
you can't. You know it.
You're right. You seem to be incapable of saying that, and I appreciate the phone call, but it's just a fact. So far, the trade has not worked out. We're not saying that the trade is over. It might eventually turn around. If he is a Pro Bowler
and they
this
bet
year,
big that it's going to turn around, by the way, because they had options. This was my point. They had multiple chances, off-ramps, where do you want to continue, yes or no? And they said yes, and now we're full steam ahead. They're counting on him. They didn't do as much at that spot. Now, I know they drafted Amos, who I like a lot, but there were opportunities to go big game hunting at cornerback, to do kind of what, frankly, what the Ravens have done.
Correct.
Is to build this unbelievable secondary where you've got a handful of stars, and if Lattimore turns out great, then you've got an all-time secondary. If he doesn't, you're covered. If he doesn't play, if he does what he's done the last 3 seasons, where you miss at least 8 or 9 games, it's a disaster. I think.
To me, we're having two conversations. We're ships passing in the night there. It's pretty simple, right? What he was saying was twofold. Number one, the reason he didn't play well is because he was hurt. I agree with you. Number two, he might be really good this year. I also agree with that. And in fact, the team is not only betting on it, they're telling you that's what's going to happen. He says, well, you got to give him time. That's what's happening, is that he's being given time and he's being given another opportunity. What I'm saying is that when Jaire Alexander comes free and at no draft picks and 1/3 of the money signs up with the Ravens, it makes giving up 3 picks, including a 3rd and 4th rounder, and 3 times as much money for Marshon Lattimore look a little bit worse, especially with the lack of value in production he returned last year.